Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeanette Alamia, District Director of Guidance for the Huntington Schools. I'm so happy to see you. I know that there's a lot going on this evening between sports activities, other events across campus as well as across the district. And so tonight I'm going to share some great information with regards to not only the PSAT that your child took back in March, last month, but we're also going to talk about the upcoming PSAT and MSQT, which will be in October in the fall, as well as the SAT, which in the spring will be a digital format. So that is exciting and new. So tonight's event will be recorded. I will be posting the recording as well as the PowerPoint presentation on the website. So if you need to refer back to this information, if you have any questions, or eventually you'll have a chance to speak to our presenter one-on-one either tonight or later on after this evening's presentation, you can always refer back to the website. Also share with your friends and that this presentation, the recording will be available on the website and available to everyone. The presenter is representing the Princeton Review. And a lot of times folks think that the Princeton Review is all about test prep, but no, the Princeton Review rates the top universities in terms of value, in terms of value for your money, in terms of the rigor of the courses, and basically advises families and students with regards to how to search for colleges, and it's never too early to start searching for colleges. So tonight we are in for a treat with the Princeton Review and our presenter Alyssa Cook. She is our Long Island outreach specialist, obviously, for the Princeton Review. She has focused over the past few months on helping students and families get prepared to the college admissions and has ensured that our students are prepared for the SAT and ACT. With the recent changes, she is here to support and provide answers so that you know exactly what to expect with the digital SAT. I think a lot of you are actually very interested in finding out about that. And after the presentation, if anyone has any questions, you can schedule one-to-one consultation with Ms. Cook to create an individualized plan for success. And so without further ado, here is Alyssa Cook from the Princeton Review.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Let me just start by saying, if you didn't get to catch me at the table before you walked in and you didn't register, just scan the QR code on my table on your way out, and that's just so that you get the follow-up information with the presentation slides. I know the school is going to provide that for you with the recording, but we also send out helpful links and additional resources relating to the digital SATs especially. So to ensure you get that, just make sure you register. So first I want to applaud all of you for being here. It's the spring, it's beautiful out, and you have a lot going on in your own lives, but the fact that you took the hour tonight to come here shows that you're proactive and you're ready to make sure that you're set up for success and that you're on the right track when it comes to prep for college and for your standardized tests. So give yourselves a pat on the back, because a lot of people might just wait, or they don't think that it's important to be proactive, but it's really an awesome thing that you're looking into these resources and taking advantage of them while we have them here. So we know that there's been a lot of changes going on around the SAT, and I think that there's a lot of confusion and fear, and people are nervous. So tonight we're going to clear that up, and really the goal is to just make sure you feel confident and you know what's coming. I do want to preface by saying I am not the College Board, so a lot of the times people get confused and they think that we're the people creating these tests and that this information's coming from us, but really we're just kind of the messenger. So the College Board makes these changes, and our goal is to make it easier for you, right? We want to help you overcome these challenges, overcome these changes, and kind of crack those tests, right, to do the best you can. So that's why we're here. So On that note, if you have any questions, let's save it for a Q&A at the end so we could just get through the presentation, get through all the information, and then you'll definitely have time at the end for questions. Also, because this is being recorded, we want to make sure we get through it in a timely manner and we can answer everything at the end. So let's get started. So tonight we're going to cover three main ideas. So we're going to go over what is the PSAT. I'm going to dive into a little bit of the differences between the PSAT 10 and the regular PSAT, and just kind of give you some info on, the differences, which actually you'll be surprised there's not really many. And then really what we're going to dive into, the majority of this presentation is going to be on the digital SAT, what's changing, what's not changing, and what that's going to mean for you as students. Okay, so I'm hoping by the end of this presentation you feel confident, you could start a plan and kind of set up your timeline to plan for that success, okay? So what is the PSAT and the PSAT 10? So the PSAT 10 is nearly identical to the PSAT. There's only two differences. You take the PSAT 10 in 10th grade, and it doesn't qualify you for a merit scholarship. That's it. So when you take the PSAT 10, you are essentially taking the PSAT. And that's great news because now you are prepared and you know exactly what to expect when you go into your regular PSAT, right? So you're going to be able to see those same styles of questions. It's the same type of rigor with those questions, and it's just a shorter version, essentially. So, what did I do? So let's take a look at the difference in the PSAT versus the regular SAT. Because like I said, PSAT 10 and PSAT are the same thing. So pretty much it's nearly identical. There's just different times, right? So it's a smaller version, it's a shorter version. And one is just only offered a different time of year, okay? So it's really not that different. So sometimes you might think, oh, this is so crazy. I'm going to go into this other test not knowing. But no, the whole point of it is to prep you. And they think that, you're not totally ready to dive into that SAT. So that's why they give you the PSAT to kind of get you understanding, and also your score reports, which is something we want to go over because you guys are going to get your scores and you're going to say, what now, right? What do I do now with this information? So just to calm yourselves, this isn't the test that counts, right? The PSAT, it's not going to count. This isn't going on your record. The PSAT 10, both of them. It's really to help you prep and see where your strengths and your weaknesses are. And it's going to be broken down into a score report. And it'll show you, reading, you did fantastic in. Math, you got this many questions right, this many wrong. And that's how you go in with that plan to say, this is the area I'm going to focus on. And this is where I know I'm good, right? So just to kind of give you, that's an overall picture of, it's really not that much different. So once you've taken your PSAT or a PSAT 10, you sat for that long test, right? This is something that's kind of underestimated. Unless you've taken one of these exams, like you've never sat that long for that long of an exam, right? And really, one of the only differences is you're going to be in a testing center versus in your school, or, if you take a PSAT online, like a practice test, it's really just the location, okay? So once you've taken this test, you're going to know what it's like to sit for that exam for that long. You've seen SAT-style questions. So this is big. They're all kind of going to be the same and consistent, okay? So the styles will never change on these exams. They're always going to prep you with that same style so you know what to expect when you go for the real exam, okay? So you're going to see those styles of tests, and that's like the whole point of prep, is strategizing for these types of questions. Like when I've seen the SAT and our prepping strategies, it's like nothing you've learned in high school because it's a totally different strategy than taking a test in high school. They give you, the whole point of the test is they're going to give you a lot of questions in a short amount of time. How can I strategize and deal with this in this time period. It's all about time and strategy and things like that. So that's why prep is so important for these exams. And lastly, you will have received your practice score, which is what I just reviewed. So when you get your practice score, they give you a question by question breakdown on how you did. And that's what's amazing about it is now you know, okay, like I said earlier, strengths versus weaknesses, where you need to prep. A lot of the times people go in and they're like, oh, I'm going to have to prep for the whole exam. And you might be more ahead of it than you think. You might have done better than you think in certain areas. And then you could spend that time focusing on your weaknesses and you know, okay, I'm good on that section, right? So that's why taking these exams is so important and it helps kind of framework moving forward. So now that you've gotten your scores and you've taken that PSAT 10, let's kind of go into the things that are going to be changing. So what's changing on the SAT? This is the big change that everyone's talking about. It's been on everyone's mind. There's so much chatter around it. So we are going to crush it tonight. And you are going to walk out of here feeling like, I know everything. You have people chattering to you. You're going to be like, nah, I know the answer, right? So let's get you prepped. So everyone's talking about it going digital. Let's get into some of the major changes. So the SAT is going digital, right? We all know that. So what does that mean? Well, the College Board has been trying to make these digital exams for a long time now. They tried it with AP exams in 2020, and it kind of didn't work out as they expected, right? We had some challenges. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the greatest. We know. So they had like 2 full years to really revamp it, and they saw what happened and they were like, no way, right? We're not going to have this happen again. So what they did to avoid that is the exam will be not online. And the way they do this is by making a digital application, which, let's be real, it's an app, right? We all know what apps are. So they make this digital application, and what that means is, and I could just tell you totally straightforward, they're going to need Wi-Fi to start the test, but then if Wi-Fi cuts out, you could continue the test and nothing gets lost. Okay, we're going to dive into this further into the presentation, but that's what the major takeaway is it's not online. It's basically a digital app and it's adaptive, but we'll get there. So let's talk about kind of the nitty gritty about this test. So first it's, oh my, sorry. This thing has a mind of its own. Okay, it's going to be taken at a testing center. So this doesn't mean the student's going to sit at home, eating their Cheetos, taking the SAT. It's still going to be at a testing center, okay? It's not an at-home exam, and at-home exams provide more complications, right? So we want it to still be that same setting of an SAT exam, so we're going to keep that the same. We need to be able to proctor students and have the ability to kind of still give it that same setting. So first thing is not an at-home exam, okay? Second, increase SAT school days. This, is something that they're thinking because those administrative tasks are going to be lessened. It'll be easier. It's really, going to be more streamlined and less, pre-testing things that need to get done. So hopefully this can help increase the amount of test-taking centers that there are and SAT school days. And lastly, like I said, it's still going to be proctored in person. So what does that mean? When they take the SAT, they're going to be still monitored by someone in a room. If a student closes out that testing application, the proctor will be able to see it. If a student needs help, the proctor will still be there to help get them up and running. And no matter what, something can immediately be reported back to the College Board so they can get it back up and running. Okay? Most people have concerns about this and like the functions, so we'll get into that. But I was also told that there will be like an expert on this that'll be at the testing site. So like when a technical thing comes up, it's just like right then and there they could take care of it. So it won't be like willy-nilly, you know, they'll make sure that they can handle everything as it comes up. So let's talk about the app, okay? So what does this mean and how is it different from an online exam? So just to kind of give you some background, online exams have been around since 2020. A lot of GRE exams have been taken this way, but they wanted to kind of mirror that, like mirror the way these successful tests have been taken, and still basically offer this to students as like an addition, a new, like improved kind of like adaptive way, like we're adapting with technology and moving forward with the future. But they chose to create the custom-built digital application for a few key reasons. So the first one is it's going to be taken on a laptop or a tablet, okay? So they can use their own tablet if they'd like. They can use their student-provided Chromebook or a tablet if they'd like. But we just also want to keep in mind that the devices can be the students or provided to them. In the past, the College Board has provided tablets and Chromebooks to students. We don't know exactly how that's going to work yet. We're not saying they're going to show up with a van full of Chromebooks and start handing them out to people, but they might be there available at the testing site for students that don't have them. And the whole point of this, too, is to make sure that if someone doesn't have their own, they still have an opportunity to take the exam, right? We don't want anyone left to not have that opportunity. So next, it won't end with internet issues. This is the big question, right? What happens? We all know that internet issues are a part of it. So I'm going to share some insight with you. We've been testing internationally now, and it's been in other countries, they've been running the digital SAT, and everybody was wondering on that feedback of, oh, is it going to impact the internet? Are we going to be getting flooded with feedback that it was this big issue? And actually, it wasn't. It worked out really well. And they specifically ran the exam in remote areas where it wouldn't be, you know, very metro city condensed where there'd be so much Wi-Fi. They really purposefully made it in areas where it would be more difficult. And there was not much feedback on that. They said it was not an issue and it worked out just fine. So just to kind of calm yourself, like calm your nerves a little bit and be like, that's not going to be an issue. Like that even relieved me a little bit because I was like, this might get crazy, right? So the app works, okay? So basically, that's the whole thing. So a few key notes is they promise that they'll receive scores from students even if the internet cuts out halfway through the exam. The digital SAT will keep going without internet access. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that you just need Wi-Fi to start it, and then once you're in, you're in. If a student loses power on their device, they can simply just plug it back in and pick up where they left off. And also from the feedback from international students, like I said, we didn't get much internet issues from remote areas. Also, with the feedback we got, the main thing is making sure that you have that Blue Book app already preloaded onto the device. And I've been talking to a lot of guidance directors, and they said that's something that they're going to ensure is done ahead of time going into like that's going to be announced to you and brought to your attention. So, you know, you'll know, okay, we need to be prepared in this way. So now let's talk about the actual test. It's going to be a streamlined SAT, and it's going to be 2 hours instead of 3 hours. So that's a big one, okay? 2 hours instead of 3 hours. So this is going to be a lot less fatigue for students. It's going to be more streamlined and more straight to the point and less dragged out, and that's fantastic, right? So the time you'll be sitting in taking the exam will be reduced by a third. So it'll take up less time as well because a lot of those administrative tasks can be done ahead of time, kind of similar to like getting that application loaded onto the Chromebook and ID numbers and all of those things that go into the exam when you first get there with the proctors. A lot of that stuff will be so much easier and already like done ahead of time. So we're going to have shorter sections to the exam as well, fewer questions, and reduced fatigue. So we know that students often struggle with the fatigue of sitting there for so long, and your brain might not feel as sharp. So this is going to help kind of, and especially when you're prepping, you're going to have more energy and be able to focus better, and you won't be on like the same question for such a long time. The questions are going to be, shorter and fewer. And let's get into the biggest aspect of this. Shorter reading passages. So on the traditional SAT, the pencil and paper, you would have a reading passage that's a few paragraphs. It would be very in-depth, and then you would have multiple questions on that passage. So this is probably one of the biggest parts of the exam changing. Now the reading passages will be like 2 or 3 sentences. There will be one question on those 2 or 3 sentences, and then you move on to the next question. So that's like exhausting when you have to read like a novel for one question, right? So it's definitely going to be easier in that way. So they'll be much more streamlined and shorter reading passages. Everyone was excited about that. The math section is also going to have fewer word problems, and they're going to be more concise, okay? So you'll have fewer of those long-winded word problems. They'll be more concise. And also, I'll add this in here, even though it's further in the presentation, you will be provided a guide with math formulas, and you'll be able to use the calculator through the entire test, not just on a certain part, okay? There'll be a built-in graphing calculator into the exam application. So lastly, here we go, the built-in graphing calculator. So this exam also is going to have a lot more built-in applications for the students. So you will have access to like a highlighter where you could go in through the passages and highlight things to remind yourself. There'll be the math formula page that I was telling you about. You will also have a way to flag questions. So if there's something you're unsure about, you click it, you flag it, and then it'll remind you, go back and answer this question. There'll be a countdown clock in the corner of your screen. So for every section that you're on, you'll be able to tell if you're running out of time. It'll help you kind of stay on top of your time. And lastly, if you still want to use scrap paper, you are more than welcome. You have the ability to use scrap paper and still write things out, the old-fashioned way, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. So now, this is one of the biggest differences about the exam. And just hear me out on this section, because this section gets a little complicated to explain, but just hear me out. I'm going to talk through it. So the exam is computer adaptive. So I'm not sure if you know what that means, but basically what it's going to do is it's going to present students different questions based on their performance, okay? So if you do amazing in the first section, you're going to get more difficult questions in the second module. There's 2 modules. To explain what a module is, you probably know from tests that you take now in school. A module is like basically a section of a test, right? So it's a group of questions with the subject, and then you're going to move on to a second module. There's 2 modules. Based on how you do in the first module, you're going to get more difficult questions in the second module. If you do poorly in the second module, you're going to get more easier questions in the second module. Okay? So hear me out for a second. The College Board has been putting little twists and turns in the SAT for years. One year there's an essay, one year there's not an essay. Sometimes this happens with the points and the way that they break down the scoring. And it's really all just challenges to get in the student's head, right? And this is going to be something else that we just need to overcome if it's something that kind of psychs you out. And my number one point to this is don't overthink it. Take the exam the exact same way you would have taken the paper and pencil. Go into it with the mind frame of every single question I'm giving 100% to, and don't be thinking like, oh, did I get the harder module? Did I get the easier one? Because really what it comes down to is it's a giant bank of questions, okay? And this is how it's still standardized. It's one big bank of questions, and then based on your individual performance, it's going to feed you questions, okay? So we heard some feedback of students like after the test being like, oh, did you get that question on Benjamin Franklin? Like trying to see like if they got the same module as their friend. But really, everyone's going to get different ones because there's such a large bank of questions, okay? Does that make sense? So because it's computer adaptive, it's going to feed everyone their own test. Just like how even though when you're in school, you know, sometimes like you get A and B tests, the teachers hand out like A, B, C, and you all get different ones so you can't cheat. It's similar to that, just on a larger scale because everyone's going to be getting fed different questions. And a huge part that I'll get into further is it's also to help make the test more secure so that they can't get leaked on the internet. People can't be like reading it on Reddit the night before and then going in and knowing the questions. It's to make the test more secure. But we'll get more into it. I just know that in the past, this has been a little intimidating to people. They don't understand how it works. So that's why I wanted to spend some extra time on this portion and just kind of break it down for you a little bit more. Another feedback that I've gotten too is like, what if the students try and kind of outsmart the test, right? Like, oh, well, I'm going to answer these questions and like kind of be a little more careless on the first part so that I get the easier part, right? Every question is going to be weighted with a different amount of points. So the points, you want to still max out and get as many points as you can in the first section, because then by the time you get to the second section, you might be capped at your score. Does that make sense? So you want to still go into this test being like, I am going to rock it and give every question 100%. Okay? And then the last thing is my market director, she took the test. She took the digital exam, and she was like, I could totally see how students could get in their head, because even I was like, did I lose my touch? Like, oh my God, is this question too easy? And then she was like, I got my score, and it was totally fine. It was like what I usually get. So in that sense, it hasn't really changed. Don't get into your head about it. It's just another thing that the College Board's doing to throw you off. But we can crack it and we can beat it, right? That's the whole point. We got to beat the test. So let's get into this a little bit more. Computer adaptive tests are more secure and provide unique exams for each student. So we just went over that, right? Over the last few years, there was problems. They were leaked. Students discussed on social media. And this will just make it more secure, and all the tests will be different for every test taker. So that's like a huge part of why they did it computer adaptive. And it will also be easier to administer at test taking centers. So now that we went through all of that, that was a lot of big changes. Let's go into what's not changing on the SAT, okay? So it's digital. We saw it's adaptive, it's more streamlined, it's shorter. And, you know, the College Board is saying, well, we could have done a huge overhaul of the entire exam and changed everything, but there are still some things that we chose to keep the same. And they want everyone to know that the basic functions of the SAT and the point of it is still staying the same. So, this is a quote from the College Board. The digital SAT will continue to measure the same skills and knowledge that students are learning in high school and that matter most for colleges and career readiness. So we're going to kind of go into that a little bit more as well. So let's look at the question types on both exams. On the current SAT, you're going to have reading, you're going to have writing, and you'll have math questions, right? On the digital SAT, you're going to have reading and writing questions, and you're going to have math questions, okay? It's the same. It's staying the same with the questions. And as I said previously, The style of questions, the context of them is going to be pretty much the same. The only thing is they might be easier based on the reading sections, the more concise math questions, and how it's going to be shorter. Okay? So that's a positive, right, for us. They said, "Oh, we could have changed all the questions and made it so different, but we wanted to keep it the same." And your prep, honestly, overall will stay around the same. It's just going to be getting used to taking it digitally. But we're going to still pretty much have the same strategies for answering these questions, right? So that's something, not major changes. And the SAT will still be scored on the same scale of 400 to 1600. So, we want to make sure that those two versions are going to be used the same way for college admissions. So the college admissions officers, they need to understand what the difference between a 1230 or a 1070 or a 1450 is. It's going to be the exact same with the digital SAT, so they're not going to mean anything different. Also, I know we're not really talking about the ACT right now, but I'll throw this in there because I get this question a lot. There's no difference between the ACT or the SAT when you submit them to a college. They're going to look at those scores exactly the same. Neither holds more weight. So if the ACT is something that you're feeling, oh, I'm going to stick to the ACT because the paper and pencil sounds better for me, that college is not going to look at it any different, okay? They're going to see those tests exactly the same. And the ACT hasn't announced any changes to go digital, so you're still good with it being paper and pencil for now, okay? So this is important, though. The scale is going to stay the same, and that's something along with that computer adaptive topic. The questions are going to be weighted the same with the same scores, right? So you're still going to get that same score, and that's not going to be like a crazy change when you get your score back. So now, what does this mean for you? So basically, colleges will view the SAT the same way. That's basically the subject we're talking about right now. They were consulted on this new digital SAT. So the board of trustees for the College Board is filled with college administrators and also people that work in high schools, high school administrators, okay? So this wasn't something that they just decided and they were like, we're going to do this and everyone's just going to have to deal with it, right? They totally went over this with college admissions to see if this is something that would work for them and still be able to measure that same knowledge for college readiness when students are applying, okay? So that's just something we like to go over because if colleges and high schools were like, this isn't going to work, this doesn't make sense, they wouldn't have went through with it. They totally confided in them and asked, to make sure that everyone was on the same page. Also, validity studies on the SAT scores. So you want to make sure that everything is going to, that it means the same, kind of like that same theme I've been going over. We want everything to correlate the same way, to mean the same thing when students are submitting these scores, okay? So, and also, colleges can still be test optional. So this isn't going to impact test optional admissions. They could still be test optional. Since I have you here, and this isn't like a major topic of tonight's presentation, but since you're here, I just want to share a few things in relating to college optional admissions, just for your own knowledge. So when you think of college test optional admissions, just make sure you do your due diligence. I think that this is an extremely important thing. It may be test optional to get into a school, but just make sure you're asking questions. I tell parents, be the squeaky wheel, right? Be that person that reaches out and says, what does this exactly mean? Will it still give us a chance to get merit or scholarship money, right? Because these test scores still help with scholarships, okay? And also, if you have a specific program in mind that you're going for, like nursing or engineering, you may still need scores for those programs. So it might be test optional to get into the school, but then if you have a further plan down the line, and they might require those scores. So just do your due diligence, ask questions before you're applying. And since you are ahead of the game, you might not have your list of dream schools curated yet. We look at SAT and ACT scores as like a little insurance policy, because when that time comes that you're going to apply for school, you'd rather have them and be able to submit them than never have done them at all, right? So you're ahead of the game by taking that PSAT 10, but that's just a little nuance that I like to share with people just to give you additional information, because I know that test optional is a hot topic right now, okay? So here, let's break down the timeline, right, of how this is all going to come out for you. So there is still time for everybody to adjust to this new digital SAT. The College Board's going to be doing a tiered rollout. So as I said earlier, they're doing international Got the SAT this spring, right? That's where we're getting all that feedback from. They're telling us how it's going. They didn't do a hard launch in the US yet. Paper and pencil this spring was this spring. Paper and pencil will be in the US for the PSAT and SAT. Fall 2023, you're going to get your first digital PSAT, okay? But you still have the opportunity to take a paper and pencil SAT. You will have that opportunity up until December of 2024, and then March it switches to be digital, okay? So spring of 2024, we're going to be digital across the board. So you have a unique circumstance. If you're going into your junior year, you will be able to take it paper and pencil in the fall and in December, and then you'll have the option to take it digital in the spring and then the summer. We're kind of advising students to, if you want, you could do both and then submit what scores you prefer, right? Which one you liked better. You could prep and say, I'm doing the ACT, right? That's still an option. I'm going straight for ACT. I don't want to deal with this. Or you could stick to one, do your paper and pencil, and then just say, this is the scores I'm going with, okay? You could ask right now. What's the question? March 2024 will be the first time it's going to go digital fully in the United States. Yep. So you, like I said, you'll have fall and December to take it paper and pencil still next year. Okay? So you have options. You could still take we're going to run through this. This gets a little repetitive, but I think it's good to kind of go through the timeline. So you still have time. Paper and pencil is going to be offered till 2024. You could take both versions, and you could still take that ACT, right? So that's going to be another option for you. Also, too, since you are currently in the beginning phases, what we like to also advise is stick to one test. Don't drive yourselves nuts going back and forth, flip-flopping between the ACT and the SAT. We always suggest taking a practice test of both if you're unsure, seeing how you do, looking at those scores, and then from there, whichever one you hate less, which is what we like to say, which test you hate the least because they aren't the best, sticking with that exam and really staying on that road, right? Because that'll help with your prep. You don't want to drive yourself nuts bouncing back and forth between the exams, right? Stick to one, which one you feel more comfortable with. So here's the timeline. One more time, we're going to give it to you. You have the College Board releases the practice test. International students are taking it right now. Juniors will take the digital PSAT in the fall of 2023. And then spring 2024, the digital SAT will be offered across the United States. Okay? But just, all the schools have been prepped for this. That's why we're here. I think it's, like I said, it's fantastic you came to this presentation instead of just wondering, right? Like now you get all this information. You could go into it knowing your timeline. You are going to get this presentation as well, so you'll have it in your back pocket. And as I was saying earlier, it still will be a standardized test. And any standardized test can be beaten, right? So that's the whole point is don't let these changes hold you back. The SAT, they will continue to make changes throughout the years. It's been changing since the 30s, okay? They're always doing this. They're always throwing curveballs because that's the point. It's to make it hard, and they want to trick you and, do mind tricks. That's really what it is at the end of the day. But they could be beaten, and that's why we have so much prep available. And especially if you're here now, like I said, preparing yourselves and you're getting that information, you're just setting yourself up for success. And yeah, just don't overthink it. Just go into it, prep, and you'll be good. Also, another tip that I'll share with you, you might not be here yet, but when you guys do decide on what schools you want to go to, and you have that list of schools, I know we're a bit of the head of the game on that. Don't drive yourselves crazy being like, I need to get a 1600, right? Look at what the median score is for the school that you're trying to get into and focus on that score. At the Princeton Review, a huge quote that we share with everyone is a good score is the score that's going to get you into your dream school. That's a good score. So whatever, if your dream school is Stony Brook or your dream school is to go to upstate into a SUNY school, right? Wherever it may be, just look up what their median score is because you might be closer than you think. And college admissions time can be so stressful and you have so many other things to focus on. You may be right there where you need to be, and then you could focus on all those other things instead of fighting and taking tests over and over again to squeeze out an extra 20 points, right? So that's just another little nuance that I like to share with everybody. Just do your due diligence and be the squeaky wheel. That's what I say to everyone. Ask questions and be annoying because it'll get you the information, it'll get people to pay attention, and you'll be better prepared, right? Okay, so that was my presentation. She said earlier, I'm available. I work for the Princeton Review strictly on Long Island. I am their outreach specialist, but also my job is to work with students and parents. And if you're confused or you have any additional questions or you just feel like you don't know where to go or you're overwhelmed, you can grab my business card and set up a consultation with me, and we could sit on the phone or we could do a Zoom call and talk for 30 minutes, and you could tell me what your concerns are, and we could kind of give you an individualized plan for success and make sure that you have all the resources you need. So just know you have, your counselors, you have me, and there's resources out there for you, okay? Okay, let's get into the Q&A, guys. So you waited patiently, so if you have any questions, I'm all ears. Are we good? Okay. Okay.
One of the things that you may be wondering about students with testing accommodations, like how is that going to look like for my student who has time and a half or even a reader, right? And so these digital exams will have the built-in testing accommodation to the app. So every student that has a need or documented IEP or 504 accommodation plan would have testing accommodations, whether it is, like I said, extended time, a reader, use of a calculator. Now everyone can use a calculator. Once that student has that document, you need to request to testing accommodations, you need to request to the ACT and the College Board. Okay, so you definitely need to reach out to the counselor immediately, whether you think your child might have approved accommodations or not, just reach out to the counselor. So this Blue Book app is the testing app that the College Board will be utilizing and uploading to the student school issue Chromebooks, and that's how we're rolling this in the fall for the PSAT. And so students will be taking their exam with their approved, not just because you have an IEP doesn't mean that as a default you have the testing accommodations, but it is approved by the College Board. the testing accommodations will be uploaded into the app. And so the student will automatically have that time and a half built into that per section. Is that clear? So obviously we will still need to accommodate students and allocate them in separate locations with the proper proctors because they are staying longer. Now, one of the things that also will happen and that we are ready. I just want to let you know we've been working on this since day one, since the College Board has released that these exams are going digital. First, if we survive the AP, the digital version of the AP back in 2020 from home, we can tackle this, absolutely. And so we are ready, working with the technology department, with Mr. Landers, et cetera, and Dr. Acker, and so they've been so helpful that we are so confident that we are giving our children, our students, the experience that they deserve, right? The testing experience, that an environment conducive for testing. And so oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I got passionate and sometimes I go on a tangent, sorry. See, passion supersedes sometimes the train of thought. But what I'm about to say is that with regards to, oh yes, it is a requirement to have Wi-Fi. We will have that, obviously. We are expanding our Wi-Fi, our capability and our access spots. I don't know the language, but Mr. Landers and I are, again, having meaningful conversations about that. And so if the student gets bumped out of the app, I just want you to know that they're easily going to be able to go back in without losing the questions that they just previously answered and without losing the time, okay, whether you have extended time or not. And so if I did not have any issues, but Miss Cook was next to me and she kept getting bumped up like maybe twice from her app, I'm going to be done much earlier. So again, we are already prepping and saying, okay, what happens when a student is done and then this other student has 10 more minutes to go? So we are already prepared in terms of, again, providing students a conducive environment that they're done, they can get up quietly without disrupting the rest of the group, and everyone else will be testing fine. So I just wanted to let you know that please rest assured, it's been months, it's been probably since the summer, early fall, that we have knowledge of this, that we have been behind the scenes getting ready, going to webinars, asking questions straight to the College Board, and obviously our collaborators such as the Princeton Review are helping us with the transition, especially with the prepping of these exams. So if you have any questions pertaining to those logistics, and that I may or may not be able to answer tonight because, of course, more information is to come, please approach us one-on-one after the event. But any questions with regards to the presentation that Ms. Cook just delivered? So I'm going to speak because of the recording. So I'm going to repeat what you said, that Ms. Cook from the Princeton Review stated that you can actually go to the collegeboard.org website and view a sample of the digital version of the exam and the Princeton Review's website. Okay. Questions? Comments? Concerns? Okay, well, I hope that this information you found this information useful, helpful. Please spread the word. Please make sure that, that everyone is informed and empowered with this information, and that you please do reach out to your counselor with any questions, or myself at jalomia@hufsd.edu. You can certainly approach me. And thank you so very much for being here. Thank you.